Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Rakesh. So we will explore cybersecurity topics to help to stay informed and secure online. So today we are discussing about one of the most dangerous cyber attack in the world, which is known as cross-site scripting, or in short, we can call it as XSS. What does it mean? The background. How does it work? What all harm it can cause, and how can you potentially stay safe or avoiding it to some extent. If you are a developer, so sit back and have must watch. What is an XSS? So cross-site scripting is an attack in which an attacker executes a malicious executable script in the code of a trusted application or a website. Example: login forms, search box, message box, and comment section, etc. There are three types of accesses. What are they? Reflected accesses, stored accesses, and DOM-based accesses. So what is reflected accesses? So when user and attacker executes a code in the input fields instead of a data and start execution, and reflected back in the browser, it's called reflected accesses. If the attacker executes a JavaScript script alert script in a request and sent to the web server, and the web server responds using a payload with the response and get a pop-up message, which is called as reflected accesses. Stored accesses: when a user and attacker executes a code in the input field instead of a data and reflected in the database is called as stored accesses. So stored accesses requires user supplied inputs to be stored by the application, making it a persistent and render within the page. This following list identifies some typical locations where stored accesses vulnerability exist. Message forms, blog comments, profile page informations, and admin portals. DOM-based access. So DOM-based access vulnerability usually rises when JavaScript takes down from an attacker controllable sources such as URL and passes it to a sink that supports dynamic code execution such as evaluate or inner HTML. This enables attacker to execute malicious JavaScript, which typically allows them to hijack other user accounts. So we must understand two terms which are sources and sinks. So an attacker could manipulate the following sources object to inject XSS payload and have the output render within the page. Payloads are document.url, document.document.uri, document.url uncoded, document.basic URI location, document.cookie, document.refer, window.name. A sink is a potential dangerous JavaScript function or DOM-based that can cause undesirable effects if attacker control data is passed to it, like document.write, document.location, document.cookie, json.fetch, element.set attributes and regex value, document.domain, WebSocket, post message, set request header, file reader.read as text, execute SQL, session storage.set items, document.evaluate. How can we fix and how can we find XSS vulnerabilities? So by using manual testing and automation testing and also the unit testing, we can find the XSS vulnerability. You can manually test for XSS vulnerability by injecting different types of scripts, payloads into user inputs and observe the output. This can time consuming and error prone, but it can be effective for identifying basic XSS vulnerability. So we can also perform automate scan. There are number of automated security scanners available that can help you find XSS vulnerability. These scans can be good way to identify a large number of potential vulnerabilities quickly, but They may not be able to identify all vulnerabilities. For example, of these scanners can be search for XSS scanners. So, unit testing. During development, we can write unit tests to check for XSS vulnerability in your code. This will help you to identify and fix vulnerability early in the development process. Fixing the XSS vulnerability. So input validation, output encoding, content security policy. So this most important way to fix XSS vulnerability is to validate all users input before it is displayed or stored. This means checking for any potential malicious characters or script and removing them. There are libraries available for many programming languages that can help with input validations. Output encoding. When you display user inputs on a web page, you must encode it to prevent it from being interrupted as HTML or scripts. This will help you to prevent XSS vulnerability. There are different encoding methods available depending on the content. You can find more information by searching for XSS output encoding. Content security policy, also known as CSP. A content security policy can help to mitigate the risk of vulnerabilities by restricting the types of security scripts that can be loaded on a web page. You can search for content security policy as CSP to learn more about the implementing this. There are different names for XSS process scripting vulnerabilities. XSS vulnerabilities also known as reflected XSS, which can be called as non-persistent cross-site scripting, non-persistent XSS, type 2 XSS, server XSS. And we can also call server XSS as stored cross-site scripting, persistent XSS, persistent cross-site scripting, type 1 XSS, and server XSS. DOM-based XSS, also known as DOM-based cross-site scripting, type O XSS, type 0 XSS, client XSS. How can we prevent XSS? We can prevent by using output encoding, whitelisting, and input validation. We can prevent the XSS vulnerability from the application, web application. When displaying user inputs on a page, web page, encoded it to prevent it from being interrupted as HTML or script. This ensures the browser treats it as plain text. There are different encoding methods for various contents. Search for XSS output encoding to learn more. Whitelisting. So this validation attempts to check that a given data matches a set of known good rules. Whitelisting filter list is also known to be safe. Whitelisting filter is the most commonly used filter in the modern web application. This filter can be done both in the client and the server side. Input validation. This is the first line of the defense. Always validate all user inputs before it's processed or stored. This means checking for unexpected characters, scripts, or any else that shouldn't be there. Remove or sanitize any suspicious inputs. May Many programs languages have libraries to assist with the details.